Read the Constitution. Read the Federalist Papers. Read about the importance that our framers and founders placed on judicial independence, and reflect on what your conduct will do to the administration of justice in the United States of America, to the rule of law that has been sacrosanct for the better part of 2.5 centuries.
Every economist in the country is now predicting that we will have a recession if we are not experiencing one already. I don't know that most Americans, I'm not an economist, but I think most Americans, whether they're in West Texas or in Colorado, they wouldn't describe a recession as an economy running well. I mean, does that make sense? You don't disagree with that, right?
I think the American people who voted overwhelmingly and every swing state in support of this president said, I don't want any more of the unbridled spending and failed economic policies of the Democrat Party, with all respect, and President Biden, and the inflation that came with it, and the increased debt that came with it, and the depressed economy that came with it.
It sounds like you're defending a recession. I don't get it.
It is difficult to listen to this debate, to hear the arguments peddled by my colleagues that are hypocritical at best and intellectually dishonest at worst.
In order for the Supreme Court to issue a ruling that affects the entire nation, at least 5 justices of the Supreme Court must concur. Yet today, individual district court judges are asserting this authority by themselves. This is an outrageous abuse of public trust and judicial power, and it's opened a Pandora's box that threatens the fundamental constitutional order. The Congress is elected to make law. The President is elected to enforce it. The judiciary is appointed for the sole purpose of resolving cases and controversies brought to it by individual injured parties. Traditionally, that means an injured party seeks redress through his local district court. This simple process assures decisions are limited to the unique circumstances of the individuals involved and are restricted to cases within that district, subject to appeal, first to the circuit court and ultimately to the Supreme Court. This assures that multiple voices contribute to the development of a legal consensus before the matter reaches the Supreme Court. A single district judge seizing this authority for himself utterly short-circuits this process and does incalculable injury to our Constitution.
Where were my colleagues when 14 federal judges appointed by Republican presidents issued injunctions against policies that the Biden administration was pursuing over the course of the last 4 years? Where were you? Nowhere to be found. I don't remember my colleagues bringing this bill to the floor. Of course not. Spare me your feigned indignation. They talk of defending the Constitution when President Trump is running roughshod over provision after provision. They talk of judicial overreach as they attack judges across the country. Read the Constitution. Read the Federalist Papers. Read about the importance that our framers and founders placed on judicial independence, and reflect on what your conduct will do to the administration of justice in the United States of America, to the rule of law that has been sacrosanct for the better part of 2.5 centuries. I cannot believe, I suppose I should, but I cannot believe that my colleagues would waste time on a bill like this, a dangerous bill, instead of addressing the consequential challenges that our country faces. I would urge every colleague of mine, vote no on this bill, and I yield back.
I want to thank the gentleman for his astute observations there, and just say that Judge Kaczmarek was several times reversed by higher courts. We never came out and said, therefore, let's ban nationwide injunctions. We did say, let's reform judge shopping, forum shopping. That's the real problem. But it's not a problem if there is a nationwide crisis created by illegal action by an executive, that a judge has the authority to counter that with an injunction, and then it gets appealed up to the Supreme Court. We reserve.
First, my colleague from Pennsylvania, Ms. Mary Scanlon, described this, and I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this right. So the resolution that you are here to testify in support of, you have described as unserious and disappointing, right? This is the bill that you
That's
want your
correct.
colleagues to vote for.
What I would tell you is the Senate's attempt at matching the balanced budget resolution of the House fell far short, which was disappointing. And I'm encouraging, as we move forward in the process, to the meat and potatoes of reconciliation, which is the policymaking side, that the House budget targets guide that. But you are correct.
I may be
was
missing this.
disappointed.
I'm not on the budget committee,
Yeah.
so I want to make sure I'm understanding this right. We're going to vote on a resolution today, right? This is the resolution that the Senate passed. That hasn't changed.
That's correct.
Okay, and that bill is a bill you described days ago as unserious and disappointing, right? It's not a complicated, those are your words.
No, but I don't dispute those words. In
so
fact,
that-
I
I just
love,
wanna make
every
sure
time you say it, I want to say amen. Inside my Southern Baptist part of me wants to shout hallelujah.
Well, I don't know why you're voting for it if that's the case.
Because there are two parts to the resolution in the Senate. There is the part that keeps our fiscally responsible framework for the House, which I implored my colleagues in the Senate to adopt in the upper chamber. They failed to do that.
Okay.
And all I'm saying is, when we get to the combined reconciliation bill and the policies that will ultimately effectuate the changes,
I understand.
that's what should, the House should drive that.
I understand how you're rationalizing your vote on this. I'm just making sure it's clear for the record, because I don't want to be there any ambiguity. I'll just again quote from this article. It says, quote, this is from The Hill. Arrington criticized the budget plan for creating $5.8 trillion in new costs. That's the bill you're asking us to vote for, right?
I said 5.8 trillion in new cost with only a mere 4 billion in spending reductions that are enforceable.
Got it. But I'm
because I have a hard time believing that we're going to do more than what is enforceable and that which we are bound by law, which is why the House is superior.
I
The
hear
House
you.
is pro.
Again, I recognize rationalizing the vote, just trying to clarify your perceptions of this bill. Because you
Of
can
the,
imagine
of the Senate's version.
But the Senate's
of
version is
resolution.
what we're voting on.
No, we've got two. That's I admit.
I mean, that's
I
what we're
admit.
here to meet about.
I admit it can be complicated for some, and I'm not being demeaning, but let me explain the complication away and simplify it. The House has a set of instructions that are fiscally responsible, and it's a complete plan.
Oh,
the
I
Senate
see. Are those
has-
binding on the Senate? Those instructions?
They are not binding.
They're
on the
not
Senate.
binding.
That's
oh,
correct.
interesting. Okay, so yes.
And that's the concern I expressed.
I hear you, which is why I'm confused that you're voting for the bill. This is a very circular argument. On the one hand, you get where I'm coming from, Mr. Chairman. You blast this bill as unserious and disappointing and as increasing the deficit, blowing up the deficit, $5.8 trillion in new costs. Then you make the case that, well, in fact, there are instructions that the House has dictated, and therefore that should ameliorate anybody's concerns about this bill. But of course, those instructions are not binding. So I don't get it. I mean, I hear you.
You know, you're expressing the concerns that I expressed, I think, very accurately.
Then why not vote
and
no
there's
on the
still
bill?
there's still the concerns I have. So the more you talk about it, the more I think, my gosh, Mr. Neguse and I actually agree with the concerns that if the Senate's resolution were to guide the reconciliation process, I think we end up at a far less responsible outcome.
Join me in voting no. It sounds like you're a no vote. I mean,
I'm
the chairman of the House Budget Committee.
concerned for the reasons you articulated.
Well, I would encourage you, if that's the case, to join House Democrats in opposing the bill. I mean, it seems like you're almost there. So anyway, I'll move on. I want to talk a bit about, I love having the opportunity to have the budget ranking member and the budget chairman here, so we can talk a bit more about the broader
Why don't you pick on him a little bit?
So, Mr. Arrington, you posted this on X about a year ago. This is in August of 2024. It's a tweet, and it says, "Nobody knows how to get an economy running like President Trump." You still believe that?
I believe that President Trump's economic
Do you still
agenda.
believe that? It's
Yeah.
not, yeah.
Oh,
you
yeah.
Still, you still
And if
believe-
past is prologue,
Got it.
we're going to have a red-hot economy like
past
we
is
did the
prologue.
first.
Let's talk a bit about the present. So
Yeah.
what do you describe an economy running well as? How would you describe that? What
I
barometers would you use?
would say
Would a recession count? Is that
I would say growing the GDP by almost an entire 1% in 2 years after deregulation, tax cuts, work incentives,
it's
good
interesting
energy
that you
policy.
used 2 years. Because
No,
there's-
in 2
I know,
years
I
prior to
understand.
COVID.
It's interesting that
Yeah.
you've used 2 years as the marker because, of course, as you know, every economist in the country is now predicting that we will have a recession if we are not experiencing one already. I don't know that most Americans, like, I'm not an economist, but I think most Americans, whether they're in West Texas or in Colorado, they wouldn't describe a recession as an economy running well. I mean, does that make sense? You don't disagree with that? Right?
I think the American people who voted overwhelmingly and every swing state in support of this president said, I don't want any more of the unbridled spending and failed economic policies of the Democrat Party, with all respect, and President Biden. And the inflation that came with it, and the increased debt that came with it, and the depressed economy that came with it.
It sounds like you're defending a recession. I don't get it, honestly.
Oh,
like, let's just level
yeah,
with each other.
yeah.
Let's just level with each other.
I'd love to.
Okay? If a Democratic president were in office
Yeah.
and we're taking actions that were causing a recession, you're going to tell me with a straight face you describe that as the economy running well? Let's be serious with each other. You know that's
First
not
of
the
all,
case.
there's not a recession. There is the political courage to reset an unfair trade dynamic with the United States, which I hope you would support.
Okay, so
right?
stock market collapsing,
Yeah.
bond market in turmoil, recession on the horizon. None of that to you constitutes an economy that isn't running well. That's
no.
a fascinating.
It's
That's a fascinating position to take. You know what's
Yeah.
interesting? Okay, how about this? How would you describe a 1,000-point drop in the stock market? How would you describe it?
I would say the stock market rises and falls. It's more sensitive to changes.
Rises and falls. Okay,
It's
so
more
here's a statement.
sensitive to. Can I just complete my thought?
You answered it. You said rises and falls.
Changes in policies.
Sure.
And a tremendous shift, I think you would agree,
Yep.
with the policies of the last administration.
Okay.
And where this president wants to take our
Is
country.
it a big deal or not? I mean, or filibuster.
Which one?
A 1,000-point drop in the stock market. How would you describe that
I
to your
think
constituents?
I think it's going to be a much bigger deal when the stock market over the long run improves along with this economy
Okay.
and along with the worker wages.
That's not what you were saying last year. That's
tell
not
me-
what you were.
tell me what I
explain it to
said
you.
last
So
year.
last year, here's a statement.
Yeah,
A press
please.
release from the House Budget Committee. Chairman Arrington, on the drop in financial markets and the fiscal decline of the Biden-Harris administration's economy. When the stock market dropped 1,000 points several years ago, you rushed to bemoan President Biden's actions and the economy that he was presiding over. You condemned it. Now the stock market drops 1,000 points every day for the last week, and you claim it's the economy running well. Do you understand why that would be a tough argument